Supercars used to be temperamental machines, spending as much time at the shop as they did on the road, and even then it was only on warm and sunny days. But that's just not the case anymore.
That's right, we live in a world today where 500 horsepower cars aren't just reliable, but they're comfortable and can handle any weather, which is good because we're currently experiencing the winter from hell that just won't die.
While we planned a wicked super sports car comparison for you today, the truth is the conditions are just too wet and sloppy. We've actually got a snowbank down the front straight, which makes it a good thing that both these cars are actually still on winter tires.
So we have an Audi R8 V10 and a Porsche 911 Turbo and a messy track. Time to have some fun. At the heart of the R8 is a meaty 5.2-liter V10 that can scream all the way up to 8,700 RPM and makes 550 horsepower and 398 pound-feet of torque. A 6-speed manual transmission is available with this engine, but our test car comes with the quick-shifting 7-speed S-tronic dual-clutch automatic. Audi claims this supercar can rocket from 0 to 60 in just 3.3 seconds and has a top speed of 197 miles an hour. That's a hair slower than the 911 Turbo on the low end, but a smidge faster on the top end. R8s do not come cheap, and the V10 Plus is the most expensive model in the range. Base prices begin at over $170,000, while our test vehicle, optioned up here, ran $187,590.
So this may not have a big, sexy V10 from Lamborghini under the hood, but it does have these two sweet plastic fans up top. Underneath those fans is a twin turbocharged 3.8-liter Boxer Flat 6 that makes an impressive 520 horsepower and 487 pound-feet of torque. It'll also sprint from 0 to 60 in 3.1 seconds and hit a top speed of 198 miles an hour. With the Sport Chrono package, this car will sprint from 0 to 60 in 3 seconds flat and hit a top speed of 196 miles per hour. It's also equipped with Porsche's PDK 7-speed dual-clutch gearbox, and price starts at $148,300, and ours with the Sport Chrono package and a couple other features comes in at just under $164,000.
There's no denying that the R8 is more of a head-turner than the 911. Although the same basic shape's been around since 2007, that's nothing compared to the Porsche that has looked the same for over 50 years. Audi does plan to replace this model soon, but even 2 years after its latest refresh, I still get attention everywhere I drive it. In fact, people have been chasing me down in the streets.
Yes, it still looks like a 911, but that's a good thing, because this is one of the most iconic sports car shapes in the world. As you'd expect with a turbo, it's wide in the back. In fact, it's 3.3 inches wider in the rear than the regular Carrera. It's also got active aero, both the rear wing and an innovative front lip that deploys for added stability and downforce.
The R8 doesn't just resemble an exotic car on the outside, but also on the inside, and that's not necessarily a good thing. Besides not having any sort of smart access to get into the car, it actually requires a physical key to start the car. The climate control knob is old school, and Audi's MMI system seems to be a generation or two old inside the R8. But Audi does get the fundamentals right. Sightlines are actually pretty good for a mid-engine car, and the steering wheel, paddle shifters, and pedals all seem to be in the right spot. As well as a generous amount of headroom above the seats thanks to this bubble that allows a helmet to be used while driving. And while we're talking about exotic cars, Audi has also got the pricing right when it comes to options. The automatic transmission, that's over $9,000. To get the quilted seats and roof, that's over $6,000.
Here we are in the 911 Turbo, which is actually very familiar to me because I've been in a base Carrera before, and this is pretty much the same interior. We do have some turbo badging here on the shifter, as well as 2 spots on the gauge cluster. We've also got the Sport Chrono clock, but other than that, it's really pretty standard 911 fare in here. We've also got the $3,500 Burmeister high-end infotainment unit, which makes no fewer than 821 watts. Although there's no exotic materials in here like there is in the Audi, I will say that I'm in a much more natural seating position, and being a 2+2, there is some usable space back there, and there's also more cargo space, so overall it's just a more practical daily driver. Considering the sticker price, I will say it's a little bit disappointing that there isn't something unique and special to the interior, say some more aggressively bolstered sports seats.
Unlike the 911 Turbo, the V10 Plus comes with a non-adjustable suspension. That means the Audi is stuck in hardcore mode at all times. Now on a racetrack like this, it's phenomenal, but on twisting backcountry roads, it's quite punishing and can be jittery at times. That said, if you find a nice, flat, smooth piece of tarmac, it is worth the harsh ride. And it's not just the suspension that can't be adjusted. The Porsche has all sorts of different buttons to customize exactly how you want the car to behave. The V10 Plus has regular or sport. Now, when you do push sport, it does transform the car. Throttle response becomes much quicker, and the 7-speed dual-clutch transmission reacts very, very fast. The steering feel and responses of the R8 are quite good, as should be expected from a supercar. However, they're not quite as good as the 911 Turbos. That car seems to be a little more precise at turn-in and has a little more bite. I'm fighting for traction out here a lot more than Dave is in the 911 Turbo, and it's not just the front end but the rear end as well. And you can't say it's the winter tires because both cars are driving on the exact same tire. But the one area that the Audi definitely beats the Porsche is engine sound. Yeah, the 3.8 boxer turbo sounds good, but nothing compares to this 5.2 liter V10.
So you remember that part when I was complaining about the interior not being special enough? Well, turns out you can forget all that because the special part happens once you get on the other side of a corner and do this. Woohoo! This just in, kids. The Porsche 911 Turbo is fast. It may not quite have the exotic wail of that V10 in the Audi, but man, this thing really does make some cool noises. You can hear the turbo spooling up when you get on it, and then when you get off it, you get these really neat burble popping and hissing noises from out back. It's also seriously impressive the way it puts the power down coming out of the corners. In the Audi, you can really see it's struggling a bit for rear grip, but I have not been able to break the rear tires loose on this at all. It just sticks. The other thing that really impresses me about the 911 Turbo is how good it feels on corner turn-in. I wasn't expecting it just to have such a quick, precise feel on turn-in. I think it's the active rear steering that's really making this car dive down to the apex so nicely. We've got these nice aluminum paddle shifters on the steering wheel here, but to be honest, I can't even be bothered to use them because the PDK's shift logic is just so good. It's always shifting when I want it to. Why should I do the extra work? I'm also really impressed with these winter tires. I'm having a hard time imagining how much more grip it would have on the standard summer tires, because right now this Porsche is just making a ton of grip. It's possible some of that mid-corner push that I'm feeling is a function of the winter tires on the front being overheated a bit. I'm actually seeing some tire temperatures here on the display in front of me, and interestingly enough, it's actually the rear tires that are getting hotter than the fronts. So this car is making really good use of all 4 contact patches. I should also say that even though this car doesn't have the optional carbon ceramic brakes, these standard steel brakes are still amazing. I've got really nice pedal feel, and man, when you get on them hard, it slams you into the seat belts. There's no shortage of stopping power here.
So there's no real big surprises here. Both these cars are phenomenal. They are fast, they look good, and they handle these less than ideal conditions without issue, but they aren't exactly the same.
But for me, it was the 911 Turbo that really won me over with its amazing turn-in precision and its great grip and balance coming out of the corners. The way it puts the power down, both coming out of the corners and in a straight line, is just amazing. It's clearly the faster car of the two, so even though we didn't take any lap times, it's really clear to me that the 911 is the faster of the two cars.
And I agree, Dave, the 911 is the easier car to drive. The R8's a lot more tricky towards its limits. And as we said earlier, these cars are on the exact same tires, and it really exposes the chassis balance and tuning of the two vehicles. However, the R8 has this more exotic look, and you just feel more special driving that car.
So I guess it comes down to what's more important to you, turning laps or turning heads?